Ultimate Play the Game was a British game development studio founded in 1982 by brothers Chris and Tim Stamper. Ultimate developed titles such as Jetpack, A Tick Attack, Saberwolf, and Nightlore for the ZX Spectrum home computer. Though they saw a lot of success in their native UK, they didn't see as much in the international market. They realized their reach was limited, so they sought out something new to broaden their horizons: the Famicom. Working on a console imported from Japan, the team began reverse engineering the console to determine how the code worked, and ultimately how to develop games for the console. In 1985, the Stamper brothers sold a majority stake and the Ultimate name to US Gold, another British developer. US Gold would go on to develop a handful more games using the Ultimate name, but none saw as much success as their previous titles. Shortly before this, however, another name started appearing in the credits of Ultimate titles: Rare Limited. Just stick with me, I promise this is all going somewhere. With a new company established, the team set about developing a handful of demos to show to Nintendo's executives in Kyoto. Nintendo, who up until this point thought it impossible to reverse engineer their console, was so impressed that Rare was granted an unlimited budget to work on games for the Famicom/NES. Rare was responsible for numerous hits, including RC Pro-Am, Battletoads, Snake Rattle and Roll, and the NES port of Marble Madness. As the NES began to sunset and the SNES on the horizon, Rare again set their sights on the future. They began working with Silicon Graphics, an early 3D graphics workstation, to create a boxing demo for the SNES. This eventually led to the development of Donkey Kong Country, and Nintendo purchasing a 25% stake in Rare, gradually increasing up to 49%, making them an exclusive developer for the Japanese juggernaut. This trilogy has a fascinating development history as well, but this preamble is already turning into an amble. Between the years of 1994 and 2002, when Rare was purchased by Microsoft, they would develop nearly 100 games for Nintendo consoles. Nintendo's purchase allowed Rare to substantially grow their staff, move to a new headquarters, and begin work on a new IP, Killer Instinct. Originally meant to release on the then upcoming Nintendo 64, hardware issues forced them to instead port it to the Super Nintendo. However, Rare was just getting started with the N64. During the console's lifespan, Rare would go on to develop a slate of critically acclaimed games for the Nintendo 64, including their magnum opus. No, that one's good, but the other one. What? You know! Come on, you know what I'm talking about! Oh my god, just roll the intro. Take a trip back in time with me to 1996. I was 11 years old, and it was Christmas morning at my grandparents' house. Full of sugar and adrenaline, I was ready to start tearing into my presents. Breakfast? No thanks, I'm full of candy. Stockings? Okay, I guess, because that means I get to eat more candy. I remember there only being a handful of packages under our tree at home, before we packed them up to bring them to my grandparents' house. I distinctly remember seeing 2 packages in particular under the tree that looked suspiciously video game shaped. One for me and one for my brother. There's no way it's not a new Super Nintendo game, I thought to myself. God, I'm so clever for figuring it out. I should be a detective. I wanted nothing more than to open this present, but Dad made it very clear those were to be the last ones, and we had to wait. The absolute worst thing a kid can hear. Finally, the time arrived. Okay, boys, you can open up your last presents. I eagerly shred the paper to bits, and Mario 64, we don't have a Nintendo 64. My brother got Wayne Gretzky 3D Hockey, another early title in the library. And at this point, my grandma pipes up. Uh-oh, did Grandma mess up? My dad cheerily chimes in, hang on, I think we have one more present for you guys. He leaves and emerges with, you guessed it, a Nintendo 64. Now, my brother and I were still kinda confused at this point. I probably didn't even think it was real. We were absolutely dumbfounded. I remember saying something along the lines of, thank you? Yeah, thank you. It took a while for the reality to set in that, yes, we now owned a Nintendo 64. Dad later talked to us and told us we needed to properly thank Grandma because we didn't act especially grateful. It's not that we weren't grateful, we were just incredibly confused. And we spent the rest of our Christmas break playing our 2 new games. I remember being blown away by how realistic Mario 64 looked, and we had more fun making the players fight than actually playing hockey in Wayne Gretzky. Now, this is one of my favorite stories to tell because it says a lot about the kind of person I am. Kind of a doof. Also, I don't have as vivid memories of our other consoles. We had an NES before I was forming memories, and I only vaguely remember getting our Super Nintendo. I can't have been older than 7. This one was special. It was one we had been asking for specifically, begging our parents. Dad even went so far as to rent the console from our local video store, a place where I would end up working a few years later, just to make sure it was worth the purchase. Believe me, it was. Now don't get me wrong, Mario 64 was a great game at the time, but I needed more. It would still be another 2 years until Ocarina of Time would release, although at the time we were told it was much sooner. And there were only so many times I could collect every star in Mario 64, only so many times I could make Wayne Gretzky beat the tar out of Mario Lemieux. With my shiny new console and a stack of old Nintendo Power magazines to pour over, I learned everything I could about upcoming releases. The console had only been out a few months at this point, so there were only a handful of games to get excited about. Mario Kart 64, Cruisin' USA, Star Fox 64, and that's when I saw it. A 2-page spread in the June 1996 issue of Nintendo Power. Blast Corps. The game would again be previewed in issue 87 from August 96, and once more in issue 89 from October. The April 97 issue of Nintendo Power had an explosive 8-page blowout, with maps, tips, strategies, and more. The May 97 issue dove even further into the game, exploring the medium difficulty levels. Readers were promised a part 3 to the guide, but near as I can tell, that never happened. Now, I don't know how to like things a normal amount. I either make it my entire personality, or it's completely dead to me. Blast Corps was all I cared about. It would be another couple of months before I finally got my hands on the game for the first time, as a birthday present that July. I would spend the entire summer obsessed with it. The June 1996 issue of Nintendo Power described Blast Corps as high-tech urban demolition experts and their awesome arsenal of destruction. I had to get this game. Driving around destroying buildings to prevent a nuclear disaster? What's not to love? Blast Corps is the brainchild of Rare co-founder Chris Stamper, who once said, "If you make a game in which you knock things down, it will be fun." The impetus was simple, but how do you build a game around destruction? You need to have a reason to knock down these buildings. Lead designer Martin Wakely was up to the task. The team was small but enthusiastic, a group of bright-eyed, fresh-faced graduates eager to make something special. At any time, no more than a half a dozen or so people were working on the game. The team came up with the concept of a constantly moving object, which helped to flesh out the gameplay and impose a time limit. Wakely said Donkey Kong 94 served as a big inspiration for the level design. He said he views the game as a puzzle game before anything else. Every stage is self-contained, with everything you need at your disposal to solve the puzzle. It's up to the player to work out how the pieces fit together. Wakely and his team had their pieces, they now just had to complete the picture. A one-of-a-kind adventure through a quasi-futuristic world as you and your ragtag team of demolition experts try to avert a nuclear catastrophe. Your job is simple. Escort a mobile missile carrier across the globe as it makes its way to the detonation site where it can be disposed of properly. Here's the thing though, the missiles are leaking, and one small jolt will make them blow. What's worse, the carrier is badly damaged and locked on course, taking the most direct route to the detonation site, regardless of what's in its path. The radiation leaking from the missiles means they're too dangerous to approach directly, so the authorities have evacuated all the cities in the path of destruction. You know how evacuations go, and sometimes there are stragglers. It's now the job of the Blast Corps team and their fleet of construction vehicles, futuristic cars, and giant robots to avert disaster. Time to get moving! The story of Blast Corps is briefly described in a blurb in the manual. The game takes place on an alternate Earth, where we finally achieved world peace, which is by a wide margin the least believable part of the game. Rafters, a heavy vehicle development arm of the military, once used their technical prowess to build machines of war. Amber, Clark, Wesley, and Spike, though highly proficient, were never happy with their ultimate purpose building machines of war. After an accident leaves Wes in a wheelchair, he's promptly let go from Rafters. This inspires the friends to leave their jingoistic job behind and form Blast Corps. All of this gets expanded upon in the tie-in comic. Yeah, there's a comic. Our story opens on a moonlit night in a small, deserted town. Wild Monty Coyote always knew it would come to this. Since he was a boy, he's been plagued by what his grandma called the visions, the disturbing ability to see the future. Monty's visions have rarely been wrong, having predicted his parents' death and helping find a little boy before his parents even knew he was gone. He also foresaw the death of the town. Something is coming. Something that will consume the town he loves with fire. The old man then drifts off to sleep, dreaming of his inevitable demise. We truly open on the scene of a carrier truck, on its way to dispose of some old nuclear missiles. Suddenly, disaster strikes when the missiles begin to leak, causing damage to the cabin and the controls. Things really hit the fan when the controls become unresponsive, the vehicle having shifted into emergency autopilot mode. You know, because comic books. God help us, one of the men declares, the truck barreling into the distance. Rafters military base, the office of Colonel Barker. We're introduced to Professor Nash, one of the men who was in charge of building the missile. He's berated by Barker for his failure to plan for the good colonel's incompetence. Nash is promptly thrown in jail, and we cut to the Blast Corps team, just learning about the situation. We're introduced to Amber and Wes, two of Blast Corps' founding members. Wes, bitter at the reminder of Rafters, reveals their backstory. While on a routine mission, Wes's vehicle struck a landmine, causing him to suffer massive injuries, including full loss of his legs. His boss cruelly fires him, straight up calling him a slur, and Wes's friends, not wanting to work for a bigoted dickhead, tell him to take this job and restaff it. It's been 5 years since that incident, and now Blast Corps are leaders in their industry. It's a particularly poignant parallel harkening to the founding of Rare. A group of young prodigies in their field, no longer satisfied with the work they're doing, opt to take their expertise and create something new, something better, something special. See, I told you that long-ass intro had a point. We cut back to the present to see the gang already in action. Amber alerts Spike to the situation. A runaway nuclear carrier is locked on course for the nearest safe detonation site. A massive radiation leak means it's too dangerous to approach, and anything it hits will cause a catastrophic nuclear explosion. The truck apparently runs on futuristic space gas because, despite needing to traverse the continent, we're assured it won't run out of fuel. Emergency services have been alerted and civilians evacuated. Now it's up to Blast Corps to clear a path. The comic goes on to depict a slightly different version of events from the game, but I won't spoil it for you. We do get a brief look at some of the vehicles in action as well as a bit more characterization. It's a fun little comic, but definitely not going to be winning any awards. The art is mostly okay. The characters are highly stylized with big expressive eyes and exaggerated facial expressions. Every so often people get a little off model and some of their proportions get wonky, and you can tell that the artist was over it by the end because the last couple of pages are rough. It was a fun read though, and I'm glad I took the time to show it off. If I had known there was a comic based on one of my favorite games before, I would have owned it much sooner. The game itself doesn't delve much into the story, but you do get a bit of a text crawl at the beginning. Emergency! The screen declares in angry bright red letters as a giant truck carrying a nuclear payload careens into certain disaster. Don't you worry, Blast Corps is here to save the day. A bulldozer zips around the truck, demolishing buildings before the runaway nukes cause an unmitigated disaster. Situation? Carrier locked on course, the screen declares. Agents, Blast Corps. Chances? Slim. I knew this game was a serious game for serious gamers. Time to get moving, a digitized voice joyfully declares, your chopper hovering over the world, ready to get to work. I spent the summer of 1997 playing Blast Corps with my best friend at the time. We would go over to each other's houses to try and complete every level, including the bonus challenges. Some of them were easy, but some resulted in what we would call Worldy Go Boom. Your main goal in the game is to clear a path for the runaway nukes by breaking, bashing, and blowing shit up, whatever stands in your way. Apartment buildings? Smash. Gas stations? Smash. One-of-a-kind artwork? You better believe we smash it. Industrial plants, shipping containers, boats? If it's in the way of the missile carrier, it's gotta go. But as long as we're here... In addition to the main objective in every level of making sure the worldie doesn't go boom, each main stage has 100 survivors to rescue and 100 lights called radiation dispersal units, or RDUs, to collect. The lights will help guide you when it's not totally clear where the carrier is headed. There's an additional objective for destroying all the buildings, but you're gonna do that anyway. This can get finicky because, again, what the game calls a building could be anything from a house to a beacon on top of a bridge or a balloon in the middle of the ocean. Basically, if it can be blown up, it needs to be. It doesn't matter, we're insured, right? As you go about your business of averting catastrophic nuclear fallout, you're accompanied by one of the best soundtracks of the era. Given enough time, I could gas on about the music in Blast Corps. Oh look, there's plenty of time! The soundtrack is dynamic, bombastic, and fantastic. From the 70s funk-inspired Black Ridge works to the springy and joyful country jamboree sound of Simeon Acres to the solemn, almost contemplative echo marches. The music spans genres and decades, blending the contemporary with the classic. Each track sets the stage for what's sure to be either an exciting adventure or a really bad day at the office. Composed by Graham Norgay, who contributed to such titles as Donkey Kong Land, Time Splitters, and GoldenEye, the soundtrack stands head and shoulders above its contemporaries. Each track evokes a certain mood, and somehow all of them work appropriately for the task at hand. My favorite part of the soundtrack is that each of the main stage background themes is dynamic. As you go about your business of destruction to prevent a great disaster, the song peppily bounces along as normal. When you fail to do your job of clearing a path where the nukes and danger is imminent, suddenly the tempo increases, the key changes. What used to be a bouncy, fun-filled track with banjos and mouth harps becomes a frantic, synthy sonata to send shivers down your spine. What was once a joyful journey through time and space becomes a dirge of destruction, depicting your doom. Each level also includes its own jovial little victory fanfare, a short 2 to 3 second remix of the stage music. There's nothing quite as exhilarating as watching the carrier barreling toward a still standing structure, knowing the only thing standing between the world and certain doom is your mighty fleet of construction vehicles and giant robots. As the time ticks down and the music gets more frenetic, the friendly green arrow showing your next target changes to a warning yellow, then to an angry urgent crimson. The alarms are blaring, your team is screaming, and just as the missile truck is about to collide with one solitary steel beam, still standing despite your best efforts, you unleash one last attack, securing your victory. And the music makes you feel like a goddamn champion, as Amber cheerily declares,
"No trouble at all."
The music adds to the charm and works to enhance the frantic, frankly ridiculous task at hand. It's the perfect cherry on top of an already perfect sundae. I had the opportunity to ask composer Graham Norgate some questions about his time working on Plascore, and this is what he had to say. If I were to look over all the tunes I've written throughout my career, one thing that would spring to mind is lack of cohesion. I find it hard to write in a style that I've already written in. Whether this is a strength or a weakness is for others to judge. The way I look at scoring games is, I'll look at the scene, get a feel for it, and write for that feeling. I get excited to write in styles I haven't tried before. Put it down to a short attention span if you like, but so far it's worked out. You just have to listen to Simeon Acres. I think as the game progressed and I realized there would be way more stages than it was possible to write tracks for, we have to mix and match a little, but once you get to the outer planets, the music certainly gets a little more cosmic. Simeon Acres is the first stage in the game, and the music you hear when starting the stage sets the mood. Bright, joyful, a little bit chaotic, but generally easygoing. The banjo leading the charge evokes classic bluegrass vibes. I love a good bass line, and the bass in this song is full-on funky. It sounds like we're here to party. The fiddle and the rhythmic clapping practically beg you to get on your feet and start a hoedown. But hey, don't forget we got a job to do. Progressing through the game, you'll start to hear more of the iconic music spread throughout the increasingly challenging stages. Black Ridge Works is our next stop. This has to be my favorite song on the soundtrack, so much so that I've had it as my default ringtone for years. You're immediately greeted with a funky waka chicka lead guitar, the light airy drumming of bongos filling the space. In comes the bass, cause you know we got a groove. As the song ramps up, the keyboard kicks in, ready to take you down a rainbow ride of radical. It's a really fun 70s funk-inspired track. It's a blast driving around in the muscle car, imagining your Starsky and or Hutch on the case of this week's criminal kingpin. Next, we make our way to Micah Park. It starts with a light, almost airy, futuristic tone when suddenly the horns and drums drop in. It's domineering, intimidating, and completely super serious. Things ease up for a bit and the bass takes a lap saying, "Listen, things are pretty dark, but don't forget to relax, man." "Nah, man," the horns declare, "this is serious time." It loops around in almost chaotic circles, winding further and further down as the serious nature of the task at hand starts to weigh on you. We got a pair of runaway nuclear missiles on our hands. Our journey now takes us to Carrick Point, whose soaring, victorious tones remind us that we're the best at what we do. We've come a long way since the Rafters walkout, since we started this mission of saving the world. It's bright, cheerful, and enthusiastic. The song opens with a cool little xylophone intro before the synth starts to add in a little depth. The snare drum pops and snaps as the synthesizer sweeps high and low, occasionally bleeping and blooping to signify the future at stake. And of course, the bass is still funky fresh. The last stop on our musical journey is Tempest City. Everything about this track reads frantic and urgent, which comes as no surprise as it first appears in one of the later levels. Things start off with high-paced electronic chirps, backed by a wailing, insistent siren, letting you know that things are about to get super serious. The guitar subtly swings in to accompany the electronic blips and triumphant horns, shortly before crashing headfirst into a thrashing, thumping, spine-chilling riff. Everything about the music works to enhance the experience of an already excellent game. Alright, it's probably not that deep, the music just puts me in a good mood. As well as using music from regular stages, the race stages mix in a couple of unique tracks, from the live, playful bluegrass sounds to the frantic, high-tech industrial. I really could talk endlessly about how much I love the music in Blastcore. Seriously, if you take nothing else from this video, you owe it to yourself to listen to the soundtrack. Some of the tracks are available to listen to for free on Graham's Bandcamp, but you can also purchase the whole thing on vinyl. Graham was mostly allowed to do his own thing when composing the music, but he did have the following to say about collaborating with some of the giants in the industry. For one of the tracks, I wanted a guitar part, and the synth version I'd written wasn't cutting it. One evening, we set up a guitar amp and a couple of microphones in my room, and Grant Kirkhope kindly helped me by playing the chords and notes I needed. Having done that, and given the lack of RAM I had to play with, I made sure I utilized those previous bytes of memory for other songs. Grant has a credit of live guitar, which is a bit of an in-joke, but he's a star and I miss those days of working together as a team of composers, all wanting to do the best for everyone's soundtracks. Apart from having to play some of the music from Blastcore to Shigeru Miyamoto, who very politely tapped his foot to what was being played, I was pretty much left to my own devices. Nintendo would suggest alterations when we sent versions of the game to them, but it seems they were happy with the soundtrack. The software used at the time was very simple, considering it was the mid-90s. I had a version of Cubase, which was released in 1993. Maybe we upgraded to Cubase Score 3.0 in 96, but it lacked in bells and whistles. Cubase was responsible for running my external hardware, which again was pretty basic. I had an Ensoniq TS12, Yamaha SY77, Alesis SR16, and an Akai S3000. I used those in the beginning, before we had final hardware, for sketching out the tunes. Then from there, we slowly progressed to the system where I could write directly onto the N64. That took a lot of long days from our audio coder, Graham Smith. He was situated in my room, which meant he had to suffer from the noise of 5 musicians day and night. The luxury of working at Rare was, as a composer, I was in-house, so I got to see the progress of the game on a daily basis. This had the downside that some tracks would end up in the trash as they were no longer suitable or the scenes no longer existed. But on the plus side, it meant I could play the game along with the music and sound effects and see how they worked together to make changes accordingly. Big thanks to Graham for taking the time to answer my questions. The soundtrack stands out as one of my favorites of the era, and it was a singular pleasure to get to pick his brain. As you progress through the game's nearly 60 stages, you'll unlock each vehicle, and with a few exceptions, a training stage to get your feet wet. The joystick is used for movement, and the C buttons control the camera. The A button accelerates, the B button is reverse, the R button lets you perform your vehicle's special move. Sometimes that just means honking the horn. And the Z button lets you exit your vehicle. The controls overall feel really good. Though some of the vehicles you drive are more difficult to control, part of the fun is learning each one's quirks. The cars feel like cars and the robots feel like... well, I don't know what it's like to drive a giant robot, but they walk around like people and the movement feels natural. Destroying buildings makes you feel powerful. Encountering obstacles you can't just mindlessly plow through makes you think of different ways to approach it. Try something else, Amber helpfully chimes in as you helplessly ram your vehicle into a building. Spike sarcastically chides you, "Is this such a good idea?" as tiny bits of plaster fall from the walls. There's always another way. Every vehicle feels fun while offering a unique challenge to make your way through the stages. Well, most of them are fun. Lead designer Martin Wakely is largely to blame for the backlash. He wanted to take the fun of power sliding in Mario Kart and implement it into a game about crashing into things. The trouble is it sucks and it isn't fun. Okay, that's not totally fair, but it's just another incredibly difficult machine to master. Power sliding sometimes sends you spiraling out of control and away from your intended target, while other times it doesn't engage correctly and you end up ramming your face into the nearest obstacle. Wakely was apparently a huge champion of the vehicle, despite the protests of the rest of the team. The backlash can be extremely frustrating if you're used to the like to smash good ethos of the rest of the game. Rather than just brute forcing your way through a level, it requires skill, patience, and nuance. The ultimate joke is that once the main game is finished, you're rewarded with bonus levels in outer space, exclusively using the backlash. As much as every person with a soul hates the backlash, the rest of the vehicles in the game offer a wide variety of gameplay, resulting in some of the most fun, cathartic action you can find. Lead artist Ricky Berwick conceptualized the rest of the vehicles. While Berwick was responsible for the look, he didn't have much of a say in their function. He basically just designed them to look cool, and the rest of the team decided what they do. The Backlash isn't the only repurposed construction vehicle, as one of their other main tools is the Ramdozer, a souped-up bulldozer. It does all the things you would expect a bulldozer to do. Bulldoze. It's the first vehicle you get in the game, and one you'll see most frequently. It's slower than most of the other car-based vehicles, but it still packs incredible power. Though the Ramdozer is capable of leveling most obstacles, some will instead require you to use your wits, or explosives. The Ramdozer is perhaps the most user-friendly vehicle in your arsenal, and is featured in many of the early levels. Perhaps the most unique vehicle at your disposal is the Sideswipe. This one appears to be a modified construction vehicle as well. As near as I can tell, it's an articulated tractor scraper with the scraper changed to a smasher. Its powerful reinforced sides can shoot out to cause huge damage. The comic specifically makes note of the Sideswipe being used for clearing out cars, so I guess it makes a certain kind of sense. Such an impressive feat comes at a cost though, as this is one of the vehicles that uses ammo, scattered around in crates throughout the level. It still feels fun to drive around in the Sideswipe, trundling down a fishing pier on your way to find more ammo. The fact the Sideswipe is segmented rather than one solid chassis means it's great for maneuvering through tight spaces and around sharp corners. You'll see the Sideswipe come out in the levels that are less open and have more natural barriers. The levels feel compact, but not tight. Don't let that confuse you, as this little truck still packs a punch. Speak of packing a punch, Thunderfist packs a serious one. Clocking in at a massive 200 tons and standing 20 meters tall, Thunderfist is the largest of all the vehicles. His special technique is running at high speeds, rolling into a ball, and tumbling through his obstacles. On his right hand is his titular fist, and with the right timing and consecutive rolls, his fist is mighty indeed. And his left arm is completely missing, loose wires dangling and sparking. According to the game, his left arm is missing as a result of failed military testing, which is how he came to be in possession of Blastcore. The actual reason is way funnier. The dev team ran out of memory. It's a simple, elegant solution, but it also helps illustrate the ethos of Blastcore. Everyone can be useful. There are no mistakes, only happy accidents. While Thunderfist is the largest of the mech vehicles, his younger brother, the Cyclone suit, is the smallest. Cyclone does basically the same things as Thunderfist, just smaller. Also, instead of doing an uppercut, he does a sick flip. It's really more like a suit than a vehicle. Being smaller means he's also faster, giving him better maneuverability, but his smaller stature means he's not able to clear buildings as easily. This doesn't mean he's not up for the task, as his small size makes him the perfect candidate for tight, compact arenas where the carrier is moving at a faster pace. The carrier doesn't always move at the same speed, which is to say it changes from level to level, so you'll only have to worry about keeping the pace. The variable speed of the carrier adds to the challenge and variety of the levels. Sometimes you're given a bit more time to think while the missiles catch up, and sometimes the carrier is practically hurtling through the stage on a collision course for a tiny hamlet. Generally, what vehicles you have in the level will tell you how fast you need to be. J-Bomb is powerful but slow, and his levels tend to focus more on big chunks of tall buildings. Conversely, the Skyfall is one of the faster vehicles, so you can expect missiles to be moving at a faster clip. If Blastcore has a face character, J-Bomb is it. And why shouldn't he be? He's a giant robot with a jetpack. J-Bomb rules! J-Bomb is featured prominently on the actual cartridge itself, while also taking up a significant portion of the box art. I think the dev team knew they had a hit on their hands with this guy. J-Bomb's specialty is large-scale destruction. His jetpack allows him to fly high into the air, and pressing the R button sends him hurtling down in classic butt stomp fashion. Able to destroy tall buildings in a single bound, J-Bomb is here to party. Oh yeah, and when you let your character idle, J-Bomb will lie down in the most chill pose imaginable. God, he's cool! The team has more than just beefed up construction vehicles and futuristic robots at their disposal. You'll also have a cadre of unique vehicles to dole out the destruction. Up next in your fleet is the Skyfall. As with most of the vehicles, you can destroy things by simply ramming into them. The booster on the back of the Skyfall makes this prospect particularly appealing. The real strength of the Skyfall, however, is in its reinforced bottom. Skyfall stages will be littered with culverts, hills, and natural ramps to facilitate your ascent into the sky. Find a nice juicy ramp, fire off the turbo, and get sent flying! The booster is limited though, so you have to time your use for the perfect launch. Just as quick as you blink, the engines sputter out and the surly bond of gravity pulls you back down, smashing your obstacle to pieces. It's one part dune buggy, one part ballistic missile, all badass. Did someone say ballistic missile? The next vehicle in your arsenal is the Ballista, an ordinary motorcycle. Nah, just kidding, it's a motorcycle with frickin' rockets attached to the sides. The rockets will fire in an alternating pattern, which can be tricky. You can't exactly aim the missiles short of rotating the bike left and right. However, jamming on the accelerator will make the bike do a sick wheelie, allowing you to get some pretty impressive distance with your shots. If you're not positioned just right, your shots will sail off to harmlessly blow up some gophers. The ballista is small and maneuverable, making it great for tight quarters. There are a handful of other vehicles which can be unlocked to use in bonus missions. Like any racing game, all these vehicles are basically the same with some variance in stats here and there. You can tell that the devs really love TV, because each one is a cheeky reference to a famous fictional ride. The first bonus vehicle you'll find is the American Dream, painted red, white, and blue with its name emblazoned on the side. How patriotic! Honking the horn will play Dixie? Okay, so it's supposed to be the Dukes of Hazzard car, but I'm sure you can imagine why it's not an exact replica. The American Dream is fast, but it does not handle like a dream. This is great for straightaways, just pray to God you don't have to suddenly swerve. The muscle car, modeled after Starsky and Hutch's Gran Torino, is slightly slower than the American Dream. It makes up for it, however, with better overall handling and the ability to do some off-roading. It's a great option when the course calls for a lot of turning rather than flat-out speed. Overall, this is probably the most fun car to drive. Next up is the police car. I don't know if this is a reference to anything. I mean, probably based on the others, but as near as I can tell, it's just a police car. Maybe it's based on like Adam 12 or TJ Hooker or something, I don't know. The police car is slow to start, but once it gets going, it cooks. The trouble is it controls like booty. Honking the horn activates the siren, so that's cool, I guess. It's great for a long straightaway, but anything with hairpin turns means you're gonna have a bad time. The most instantly recognizable bonus vehicle is the van. Painted all black with a distinctive red stripe down the side, the van rules. It's fast, agile, and shockingly durable. It's the only one of the bonus vehicles you can actually do some damage with. Rather than honking the horn when you press the action button, a BA Baraka sound-alike shouts, "Out of my way! The B-team is here, baby!" Rounding out your armada are two vehicles that you don't actually drive but are nonetheless important to the team. The chopper, which gives the player a bird's eye view of every stage before being dropped in to drop the hammer, and the semi-truck, which acts as the exit when each stage is complete. The semi-truck is mostly useful when completing the secondary missions after the main objective is finished to exit the stage. It also allows you to end the stage early once you've cleared a path for the carrier to get to the end, because sometimes it moves slow. No two vehicles are completely alike. Each one serves a specific purpose, and they do it damn well. Depending on what vehicles are available to you, you know what kind of stage to expect. Levels are built around one simple concept: escort the defective missiles safely from point A to point B. The trouble is there's a lot of stuff in between point A and point B, and you've got a pair of temperamental nukes on a collision course for disaster. The equipment you're given on the stage will determine what kind of challenges you're going to face. If you start the level with J-Bomb, you can expect to see a lot of tall buildings. Starting with the Ramdozer means quick, mindless destruction, but it might also mean a more methodical puzzle. Thunderfist means you're going to rip through a mostly linear stage. If you start with the Skyfall, expect to spend a lot of time in the air. It's a small thing, but it really shows how expertly crafted the stages are. If you put another vehicle in, it's going to be a completely different, maybe even bad experience. Every level is a fully realized, beautifully rendered 3D environment, each one a unique, fun-filled experience. Okay, that's a blatant lie. In fact, there's a couple of levels that are exact duplicates of earlier stages, but this time you get a different vehicle or a different objective in the case of some of the bonus stages. The thing is, as different as every vehicle is, you probably aren't even going to notice. I literally didn't notice until I was an adult. There's a ton of variety as well, with the levels gradually adding new mechanics and challenges. At first, it really is as simple as pointing your vehicle in the right direction and blowing things up. As the levels progress, however, you'll start having to do things like move a train across the stage to access a different part of the stage, or even create a path for the character. In one level, you'll use your vehicle not to destroy, but to build, filling gaps in the ground with cement blocks. There's even a crane which you'll use to transport vehicles and explosives from one point to another, clearing a path to help you clear a path. You'll even get to drive a boat! I'll be real, I hate the boat. It's exactly like the train, but worse. Some of the levels are built around frenetic action, while others encourage clever thinking and more creative problem solving. The levels are laid out in such a way that players can first work to clear a path for the carrier, and then focus on the secondary objectives. The one level that stands out the most to me is Diamond Sands. If you know anything about this game, those two words should send shivers down your spine. It's one of the last levels in the game, unlocked after completing all the easy and medium levels. You're required to go back and forth under a train track to destroy two sides of a series of buildings that are otherwise unreachable. The timer is insanely tight, with the constant threat of nuclear disaster nipping at your heels. And if that's not bad enough, you're stuck with the Backlash, which is arguably the worst vehicle in your arsenal. It's the last major skill check in the game, so you better hope you learned how to use this cumbersome brute, otherwise you're in for a world of frustration. This stage was so difficult and frustrating that it made me put the game away unfinished for nearly a decade. The difficulty of the stage is exacerbated by the controls. Let's address the elephant in the room. The camera sucks. Lest we forget, this is the awkward teenage years of gaming. Devs were still figuring out navigating a 3D space, and it unfortunately shows. The camera does have 360 degrees of rotation, but you're limited to 90-degree increments. Additionally, you can zoom in or out. In a perfect world, you would be able to freely rotate the camera, but I really can't complain. We're still in the early days of 3D games. No games had a good camera during this time. It's worth noting that the camera controls are exactly the same as in Mario 64. At a certain point, it starts to feel like the game is mocking you as the soundtrack continues to bounce along joyfully, blissfully unaware that you're now in your third hour of hair-pulling frustration. What makes this game so special is the replayability. If your only goal is to finish the game, which is to say clear a path for the runaway carrier and save the world, you'll probably have a pretty good time, but you'll be missing out on a substantial portion of the game. You save the world, but what else is there to do? Finishing the main objective awards the player a gold medal, as well as a pay raise. Get enough pay raises and you get a promotion. The medals in promotion don't really do anything other than give you something to check off a list, but I do love a good list. In order to truly finish the game, you'll also need to find the 6 scientists hidden throughout the world. These scientists are there to help ensure the safe detonation of the nukes once they've made their way to the detonation site. With the threat of a nuclear disaster out of mind, the frantic puzzle action turns into a more methodical exploration piece. Collecting all the RDUs, rescuing the survivors, and destroying all the buildings will award you a second gold medal for the stage. There's still more though, because some stages hide communication dishes to unlock bonus levels, or new vehicles to use in those stages. They're usually races, but sometimes your goal is to collect all the RDUs or destroy all the buildings before time runs out. Each of these missions will award you a medal based on your time, but they're mostly for bragging rights. I say mostly because you will need to earn all the gold medals for what's next. After clearing all the levels and rescuing all the scientists, the nukes are escorted to an isolated spot where they can be safely disarmed. Rather than enjoying their well-earned rest, Blast Corps has one more job. Create an emergency runway for a space shuttle as it re-enters Earth's atmosphere. Though the threat of the carrier is removed, you're still in a time crunch. Did I mention that this is an emergency? Blast Corps is up to the task. But wait, there's more! So impressed with their job with the missiles and now the shuttle project, Blast Corps is offered one more job. Cleaning up debris in the farthest reaches of the solar system. If you thought it was going to be easy, you're in for a rude awakening. The backlash is back in all its slippery glory. Okay, in truth it's not actually that bad. Sometimes getting the gold has you coming just down to the line with fractions of a second to spare. Sometimes just finishing the stage means throwing yourself into the twin halcyons of frustration, slippery controls and wonky gravity. As troublesome as these stages are, they might be some of the most fun in the game. There are numerous bonus stages throughout the game, but these ones feel special. It's a victory lap after some truly heinous levels, and the fact you're getting blasted into space is frankly pretty hilarious. This game already toes the line of believability, and this section launches it into the implausible. Plus, it's actually pretty fun to send the backlash hurtling into the sky only for it to come crashing down, leaving a trail of destruction in its wake. Believe it or not, getting blasted into space still isn't the end of the game. Remember all those gold medals you earned? Guess what, Turbo? There's platinum medals now! The platinum medals are notoriously difficult. Wakely was in charge of setting the times for the gold medals on each stage, but the QA team wanted to up the ante. They wanted to see how fast it was possible to complete the stages. At some point, the Japanese and US QA teams got involved as well, resulting in a mad competition to bring the times further and further down. The final result are some truly grueling challenges that will test your skills, patience, and the calluses on your thumbs. Wakely has said he was only ever able to get a handful of the medals, so don't be discouraged if this challenge seems insurmountable, because it is. Your reward for unlocking all the platinum medals is a pretty cheeky message from the devs, basically telling you to touch grass. When my older brother went away to college, he took with him our Nintendo 64, and with it my hopes of ever finishing Blast Corps. That really could have been the end of the story, and there'd be no video for you to watch. Well, there'd probably still be a video, but it might be about something even more niche. It took me a few years to learn something valuable. You can find just about anything on the internet. Remember, it's not illegal to type anything into a search bar. At the time, I didn't know the ins and outs and what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I suddenly had access to all these games from my childhood at my fingertips. Fortunately, I had the perfect game in mind, one I hadn't touched for nearly a decade. Okay, so Blastcore probably wasn't the first game I played. I didn't even think about it until well into my journey down that particular rabbit hole. I got around to it eventually. The thing about N64 emulation is that it is really hard to do. It's only been in recent years that people have finally nailed down what exactly makes this little machine tick. Unfortunately, what this meant for me was that despite playing a game I loved as a kid, it was a bit of a broken mess. Not unplayable, but enough to turn me away from it for the time being. And that was it for a while. I didn't think about Blastcore again until a few years ago when I was looking for a game to play on my burgeoning Let's Play channel with my then 4-year-old. When this channel started, it was a way for me to share the things I loved with the people I love, specifically my older kid. This was really when I fell back in love with Blastcore. Sure, the game has aged pretty poorly, but what game from that era hasn't? It looks ugly as sin now, but this was the first fully 3D game that Rare had ever developed. I could look past that, look past the flaws and shortcomings to see a charming, beautiful game with one simple modus operandi: smash. The game was exactly as fun as I remembered, rewarding not only senseless destruction, but the spirit of exploration. I was finally able to finish the game several years ago, and I can honestly say it stands as one of my favorite games of all time. I still love replaying it every few years because I know I'm going to have fun. Hell, I got excited about making this video just because it meant I got to play Blastcore again. I played it live on stream start to finish twice. And I always joke when I finish a game on stream that I should just play Blastcore again. It's kind of a meme, but I genuinely do love the game this much. The levels are brilliantly designed, all of the vehicles feel perfectly integrated into each stage, it's easy to pick up and play in quick sessions or sit down for epic marathons, the music slaps, and it knows not to take itself too seriously. The game is rife with that signature Rare humor, the kind that only comes from living in the United Kingdom, and it's a testament to their skills as game developers. Blastcore may not have opened any doors considering they were already hanging up their coats, but it certainly proved that they were up to the task of creating a memorable IP. In case this 40-minute diatribe didn't convince you, let me put it plainly. I love Blastcore. This game is incredibly special to me for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is that it's just an incredibly fun experience. When I think about Blastcore, I think about my Nintendo 64 I had as a kid, which makes me think of my grandma, who was a singularly special person. It reminds me of summer evenings spent staying up way too late and getting in trouble with my dad. It reminds me of spending the night at my best friend's, absolutely wired on caffeine, trying again to finish that one damn stage. It reminds me why I started creating videos, to share the things I love with the people I love. It reminds me that even when things look their bleakest, even when it looks like there's absolutely no way things can get better, even when the world is on the brink of disaster, there's still some time to stop and have a little fun. And maybe get paid along the way. Blastcore is more than just a game to me, it's a special part of my life. If you've never played it, or if it's been a few years since you have, I highly recommend picking it up. Take a peek at what video games were like in 1997. This was Rare's first 3D game for Nintendo, their first game developed for the Nintendo 64, paving the way for a long, fruitful partnership with Nintendo. It was one of the first 3D games I ever played, and it clearly had an impact on me. Whenever I play Blastcore, I'm transported back in time to that summer in 1997, excitedly plugging the game I've been obsessing over for months into my console, ready for a brand new adventure. Despite the team's ambitions and the critical praise, Blastcore failed to meet expectations, sales topping out near 1 million units. Now, this was far from a disappointment, but far from the smash hit blockbuster they were wanting. For comparison, Killer Instinct sold 3.2 million, and Donkey Kong Country 3 sold 3.5 million. Blastcore was quietly left behind with other would-be franchises. Its quirky British humor, simple yet compelling gameplay, oddball characters, and charming story weren't enough for it to stand out against giants like Mario and Zelda. Rare would go on to produce several critically and commercially successful titles during their partnership with Nintendo, including the surprise hit GoldenEye 007 and its spiritual sequel Perfect Dark, as well as the smash hit Banjo-Kazooie and its sequel. They continued to be prolific into the new millennium until their eventual sale to Microsoft in 2002. This isn't the end for Blastcore though. Just like Snake Rattle and Roll, Blastcore was released on the Rare Replay Collection in 2015, bringing it to a whole new audience. Not only that, as recently as February of 2024, it was released on the Nintendo Switch Online service with a handful of other classic Rare titles. I love that more people are going to learn about this game because it's something I've been obsessed with for most of my life. I'm glad the technology is to the point where this kind of thing is possible. It's heartening to know that other people are just as excited about it as I am. Beyond this, there's never been any discussion of bringing back Blastcore in any meaningful way. Wakely once briefly toyed with the idea of a sequel in the form of an action-based combat game, but ultimately felt the gameplay couldn't be pushed much further. Instruments of Destruction, released in 2024, certainly grabbed my attention. The concept is similar on its face. Use construction vehicles to destroy buildings. But it definitely doesn't have the same charm. It is a nice surrogate while we wait for something better at any rate. Is there a chance we'll get a true sequel, or even an HD remake? Probably not, but I can dream. Thank you everyone for watching this video, it was an intense labor of love. Before I go, I want to give another huge shout out and thanks to Graham Norgate for taking time out of his busy schedule to answer my questions. Currently, Graham's music can be found in the LifeSim app Avakin Life, and you can find some of his classic tracks on his Bandcamp page. What are your thoughts on Blastcore? Do you have a game that you could rave about for 40 minutes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to share this video to help spread the good word of Blastcore. I will see you all next time, and until then, keep playing.